And we're back. So we're talking about autoethnography and sort of what it is and what it means for you to write it. And so uh, I just want to review before I move on to the next slide. Okay, an autoethnography seeks to be evocative in the writing while also being scholarly. Okay, and so I've talked about that on this slide. I now want to come to this. So overall, it involves an observation of the self. Okay, so that sounds strange. Like, does it mean I just sit around and think about myself? Sort of. It's a little deeper than that. It marries, it unifies self-reflexivity. Okay, where you are thinking about yourself, but you're also observing yourself as much as possible. Where you're not just thinking about yourself and I wonder how I feel today. I mean that could be part of it, but it's not just I wonder how I feel today. It's today I feel this way, and why is it that I feel that way, and what cultural elements are at play with my emotions, and how does all of this sort of come together into this moment. And so it's reflexivity with introspection plus creativity. And so it's not just sitting and thinking about yourself and going, dear journal, today was a weird day. It's coming at an observation of yourself in a more kind of academic and rigorous and creative way than you would just thinking about yourself. Okay, it takes the self-observation and places it into the larger cultural context of who you are and how you see yourself. And so for you in here, it's not just going to be, today I talked to myself about, today I talked to myself about the size of my feet. I don't know what you would talk to yourself about, but no, it would be actually, if you are focusing on the size of your feet and you're writing about that, why? What is that? What cultural context is that? Did someone make fun of your feet because they're too large or too small? Did that become a part of your self-talk? Is a part of your self-concept? Is a part of your self-concept that you've always had big feet, and it turns out you don't have big feet, and so now your self-esteem is all out of whack? You see how just saying someone talked to me about my feet today, that's just sort of thinking about yourself. Self-observation, self-reflexivity, coming at it in an autoethnographic manner, starts to put it into the larger cultural context of your self-concept, your self-esteem, your larger sense of identity and personality, stuff like that. Okay, so and then it analyzes it with the academic lens, and that's I just jumped straight to that and talking about self-concept, self-esteem, stuff like that. So you're going to reflect, you're going to observe yourself, but you're also going to apply academic concepts. You're going to engage in academic description and explanation, okay, of your personal experience. And instead of leaving it to someone else, you're the one who's doing it, okay? And so just to be clear, it is not just personal or confessional writing. That's something else. I mean, it might start that way. Sometimes autoethnography starts this way. Sometimes autoethnography starts just as you as the author, you as the researcher, sitting down and going, this is what I'm thinking, this is how I feel, and then it'll start to emerge into something more analytical, something more scholarly, okay? So, just as a reminder, the autoethnography must be evocative, it must be interesting, it must be well written, and it must be academically sound. It has to be analyzing experience, analyzing self, drawing larger cultural implications, saying something larger than just this is how I feel, saying something larger than just this is my story. Okay, now saying this is my story is still powerful, there's still something good there, but it's got to be just a little bit more. Okay, so I know this might be a little weird, I know this might be a little bit vague. Here are some possible forms of it. Okay, autoethnography can sometimes contain poetry. If you're someone who writes poetry, this might be encouraging for you. You can write a poem. If you've never written one before, it might be worth a shot. Okay, that has to do with that aesthetic of the text, right? Poetry being in the little stanzas that it's in is very aesthetic, and it's there for a reason, and that's something that you can do. You could write episodic narratives. Episodic narratives means here's one episode where this thing happened, and so You might end up writing some sort of final paper where you have different episodes all pertaining to a central idea or theme. So the cool thing about the episodic narrative is you can time jump. You could write an episodic narrative of something that happened yesterday in your self-talk, and then the next episodic narrative could be something that happened when you were 12, and there's some sort of link between those two things, right? Because we're talking about intrapersonal communication in here. We're talking about self-concept, self-esteem, personality, identity, communication. And so sometimes an episodic narrative is the way to go, all right? Sometimes it'll just be in the form of, here's a narrative, here's some analysis, here's the narrative, here's some analysis. And so that might not be episodic. It might just be, here is a narrative about this thing, and here's some analysis, and then here's the thing that follows logically from that. Sometimes it's long form storytelling where you write the whole thing, it's one whole story, and it starts in the beginning, it has a middle, it has an end, and throughout the scholarly analysis is just woven into the story. That works fine. There are other forms as well. You'll see what this looks like next week. So if it feels vague right now, I understand. Hang in there, okay? What does all of this mean? I've been referencing it the entire time. It's time for you to start observing yourself and your self-talk if you haven't been already. Hopefully what we've been doing in class so far has you doing this anyway. Hopefully you're in your everyday life right now and you're having conversations, you're driving to the store, you're in line at the coffee place, and you're starting to really realize how you communicate with yourself. If you're not, now's the time to start, okay? Because that's really what your final paper is going to require you to do, is to take the observations and do that. So what I want to encourage you to do is start keeping some field notes. In your phone maybe, if you've got a little voice note, or if you're someone who writes things down in your phone, do that. If you carry a little notebook, jot down notes to yourself. You'll be shocked at how even just a simple little note will spur you when you sit down to write later for this final paper. I mean, and it can be as simple as, realized in line today at the coffee shop that I did nothing but berate myself for not checking my email for a week or whatever. I don't know. Whatever you do. That's something I do. I check my email more than a week. I could not check email that long, but you know what I mean? Something like that. And so if you realize that, that's something to write about and go, maybe that's linked to self-concept. Maybe there's something I need to write about that. Okay? So start observing. Start keeping simple notes. Start keeping some simple field notes about that, okay? You've been doing some of this in your journals so far, okay? Your journals and discussion posts can serve as field notes for you to use, okay? But I also want you to not just rely on those. I want you to, especially if you want to get the most out of this as possible, keep those, find a way to start observing yourself as you do these things. You are the subject. You are who you are putting under the microscope here, okay? And it's you and your self-talk for this final paper, okay? So you've got some journals, you've got some discussion board posts that help with that. I mean, especially in week 3, you did the journal and self-talk, right? So that could be a really great springboard for us into this, but start to pay attention. Start to keep little simple field notes to yourself. You'll be surprised at how helpful that is when you sit down to write, okay? And so this segues into the final project for our semester. We're going to do an autoethnographic exploration of your intrapersonal communication. So I am going to stop right here, and I am going to do a screencast where I assign your final paper. I'm going to post that here in week 5. I'm also going to post it in the Getting Started section so that when week 5 comes and goes, you still have access to the screencast and to the final paper assignment. I look forward to seeing you in the discussion boards this week. In the discussion boards this week, we are talking about autoethnography, and I'm asking you to sort of, based on what you can see right now, this idea of reflecting on yourself, this idea of maybe keeping field notes, this idea of writing evocatively about your own communication, okay, with yourself. I'm asking you to look into some of the positives, and what are some of the things that will be really great about it? What are some of the obstacles maybe we have to watch for? in our discussions this week. So I will see you in the discussion boards.